The smell of burnt toast filled the kitchen. The toaster had jammed again, and I stood there, watching the pathetic piece of bread slowly turn into charcoal, wondering if this was some kind of metaphor for my life. 7 years of marriage, and here I was, debating whether to unplug the toaster like a normal person or let it burn to see how long before the smoke alarm betrayed me. Jessica waltzed in, completely oblivious to my little breakfast experiment. She grabbed a yogurt from the fridge, not even glancing my way. "Morning," she muttered, already focused on her phone, scrolling like her life depended on it. Now, Jessica and we weren't the kind of couple who finished each other's sentences or held hands in the grocery store. We were more of the pass each other in the hallway and acknowledge existence type. But that's marriage, right? Comfortable silence. Predictable routines. No need for fireworks every day. Except, lately, Jessica had been acting different. Not in the typical "my wife might be cheating" way, like suddenly hitting the gym 5 times a week or wearing perfume with names like Midnight Mystery. No, her change was more subtle, more annoying. For starters, she laughed too much. Not at my jokes, obviously. That would require some level of interest in my existence. But she'd sit there on the couch, phone in hand, letting out these little giggles, actual, genuine laughter at something unseen. Something hilarious. And it wasn't cat videos. I checked. Then there was the humming. Jessica was not a hummer. In 7 years of marriage, I had never, not once, heard her hum. And now, suddenly, she was walking around the house like she was starring in a musical. At first, I thought maybe she was just in a good mood. People get happy, right? But when you hear your wife humming as she does laundry, humming as she makes coffee, humming as she walks out the door, well, you start wondering who exactly is putting that tune in her head. The third and final straw? She started wearing socks to bed. I know. Groundbreaking. Call the detectives. But Jessica was a firm believer in sleeping barefoot. "My feet need to breathe," she used to say, right before shoving her ice-cold toes against my legs for warmth. And now, out of nowhere, socks. Thick, ankle-covering, betrayal socks. Something was off. I just couldn't put my finger on it. It all came to a head on a Wednesday. Not a dramatic Friday night or a weekend getaway, just a plain, unremarkable Wednesday. The kind of day where the highlight is remembering to take the trash out before the garbage truck arrives. I was home early, thanks to a fire drill at work that turned into an entire building evacuation. Nothing serious, just an intern who thought microwaving aluminum foil was a good idea. Jessica wasn't expecting me. That much was clear. She was in the dining room, sitting at the table with, drumroll, please, an open board game. Now, I don't know how to explain the level of betrayal I felt in that moment. Jessica hated board games. She considered them structured arguments in a box. Any attempt to get her to play so much as a round of Scrabble ended in her pretending to fall asleep. And yet, here she was, pieces neatly arranged, cards stacked, the rulebook open like she was preparing for a tournament. And across from her? An empty chair. "Wow," I said, leaning against the doorway. "Didn't know we were running a casino now." Jessica jumped. Actually jumped, like I had caught her smuggling diamonds across the border. "Richard, you're home early." No, take your time. I'd hate to interrupt you." And, "What is this, Clue?" I walked over, scanning the setup. "Haven't seen this game since we tried to play on our honeymoon, and you threatened to throw Colonel Mustard off the balcony." She gave a weak laugh, shuffling some cards. "Yeah, well, I just thought I'd give it another shot." I picked up a piece, turning it over in my hand. "Who's winning?" Jessica hesitated. "What?" I gestured to the chair across from her. "You playing against yourself? That's a new level of competitive." She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I could see the wheels turning, a mix of panic and calculations. Finally, she settled on, "I just like setting it up. You know, for fun." For fun. Jessica's idea of fun was binge-watching reality TV and explaining, in great detail, why every contestant was terrible. Fun was not sitting alone, playing Clue against an invisible opponent. So, naturally, I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Let's play then." Her hand twitched. Just a little. Like I had just suggested we go skydiving without parachutes. I already started," she said quickly. "You can join next round." "Jessica," I said, leaning in. "Are you cheating on me?" It was a joke. A sarcastic, ironic joke. The kind of thing I say when someone acts suspicious over something fool, like hiding the last slice of pizza. But Jessica? She froze. Not a normal, very funny, Richard, you're a fool freeze. No, This was a full-body, deer in the headlights, system shutdown kind of freeze. And that's when it hit me. Not the truth. Not yet. But something close enough to send a cold rush down my spine. Jessica was terrible at lying. Always had been. She could barely keep a straight face during Christmas when she pretended my gifts were surprises. And yet, for the past few months, she had been lying to me with ease. Because I had never asked her anything. I had been waiting for something obvious, lipstick on a shirt, a mysterious phone call, some dramatic confession over candlelight. But the truth had been sitting here the whole time, right in front of me, playing a game of Clue against someone who didn't officially exist. And I wasn't about to let it stay that way. Jessica's face was doing something weird. It wasn't shock, exactly. Shock is what happens when you see your neighbor mowing the lawn in a bathrobe. This was more like a system malfunction. The kind where someone's brain needs a second to reboot after realizing they've walked straight into a trap. "Why would you ask me that?" she finally said, her voice doing that fake casual thing she does when she pretends not to care if someone eats the last slice of cake, even though she absolutely does. I drummed my fingers on the table. "Oh, I don't know, Jessica. Maybe because you're playing Clue against an invisible person like you're part of some underground board game ring." Her fingers twitched. I was just reminiscing. It's nostalgic. Right. Nostalgic. Like how you suddenly developed a passion for socks in bed. That one hit. Her eye twitched just slightly, like I had found the exact puzzle piece she thought she'd buried at the bottom of the box. "Okay, Richard," she said, standing up so fast the chair screeched against the floor. "If you're going to be weird about this, I'm going to." And then, right on cue, the doorbell rang. Jessica's head snapped toward the door so fast it was a miracle she didn't get whiplash. I raised an eyebrow. Expecting someone? She didn't answer. She was too busy looking at the door like it might spontaneously combust. Now, I'm not a paranoid person. I don't snoop through drawers. I don't hack into emails. But when your wife acts like the FBI just showed up at your front door, curiosity wins. I stood up. "Guess I'll get it." "No." She practically lunged across the room, nearly tripping over the board game still set up on the table. "I mean, I'll get it." I crossed my arms. "Oh, by all means." She shot me a look before rushing toward the door, yanking it open just enough to block my view of whoever was standing outside. Hey," she said, voice suddenly way too high-pitched. I couldn't see the person, but I heard a man's voice. "Jessica." A few things happened in rapid succession. Jessica stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind her like a scene from a bad sitcom. There was a brief exchange of hurried whispers, and then, my personal favorite part, something heavy hit the porch floor with a thunk. A package. Now, I could have stayed inside like a respectful husband who trusted his wife's bizarre behavior was completely normal. But let's be honest, nobody in my position would do that. I stepped toward the window, peeking through the blinds like a nosy old man. And there it was. A box. A medium-sized, unmarked box sitting right at Jessica's feet, while she stood there looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. The man was still talking. I couldn't hear the words, but the tone was that of someone who was either apologizing or explaining why he accidentally set something on fire. Jessica, on the other hand, looked like she was preparing to either cry or commit arson. I leaned against the doorframe. "Everything okay out there?" Jessica flinched so hard I thought she might drop the box on her own foot. She whirled around, plastering on the kind of fake smile you give when your coworker makes a terrible joke, and you have to pretend it's funny. "Richard." "Yeah. Everything's great." I nodded. "Cool. Who's your friend?" The guy, a tall, slightly panicked-looking man in a blue sweater, glanced at me like I had just ruined his escape plan. Jessica cleared her throat. "Oh, this is, Mark. From work." Mark from work. The most generic name she could have come up with. Might as well have introduced him as John Doe, CEO of Suspicious Activities. I extended a hand. "Nice to meet you, Mark from work." Mark did the nervous chuckle of a man who had absolutely no interest in shaking my hand. Yeah, you too." Jessica cleared her throat again, this time with the urgency of someone trying to redirect a moving train. "Mark was just dropping something off for me." I looked at the box. "That's so?" "Yep. Just work stuff. Nothing interesting." "Ah, yes. Work stuff." The classic explanation for all things suspicious. I looked at Mark, who was still shifting from foot to foot like a guilty teenager caught sneaking in past curfew. Then I looked at Jessica, who was gripping the edge of the box like it contained state secrets. "Well," I said, rocking back on my heels. "Since it's work-related, I'm sure you won't mind if I take a look." Jessica's grip tightened. It's really not. But I was already bending down, and before she could stop me, I grabbed the box and lifted it. Now, let me tell you something. When you expect a box to weigh a certain amount and it ends up feeling like it's filled with bricks, your brain does a little stutter. This was not a box of office supplies. Jessica took a sharp step forward. Richard, don't. But it was too late. I flipped the top open, and there it was. Not documents, not reports, but a single, very out-of-place object. A framed photograph of Jessica and Mark, standing very, very close together, in what was very obviously not a work environment. I stared at it. I stared at Mark. I stared at Jessica, whose face was now cycling through every stage of panic at once. Mark let out a very quiet, "Oh." Jessica, to her credit, recovered quickly. "Richard, it's not what it looks like." "Really?" I held up the frame. "Because it looks like a romantic photo of you and Mark from work, wrapped up in a box like a gift." Mark made a noise in his throat. "I should probably go. You think?" Jessica shot him a look, but Mark, wisely, took a few steps back before practically sprinting toward his car. The moment the car disappeared down the street, I turned back to my loving wife. "Jessica," I said, slowly setting the box down. "Would you like to try again?" She let out a very long breath, running a hand through her hair. "Richard, please. Just listen, okay?" I crossed my arms. "Oh, I'm all ears." She hesitated. And that's when I knew. Not suspected. Knew. Jessica wasn't about to tell me she was innocent. She wasn't going to explain that this was all some hilarious misunderstanding. No, she was about to say something really stupid. And I was ready for it. Jessica was standing there like a contestant on a game show who just realized she bet everything on the wrong answer. Her mouth opened slightly, probably hoping some brilliant explanation would magically appear, but nothing came out. Just silence. "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms. "Hit me with it. Make it good." She shifted on her feet. "Richard, you're blowing this way out of proportion." "Ah, classic opening move." I nodded. "Step 1. Make the other person feel crazy for pointing out reality." "What's step 2? Tell me it's a misunderstanding?" "Maybe I don't understand how romantic photos of you and Mark from work somehow ended up in a mystery box at our doorstep." Jessica exhaled sharply, rubbing her forehead like I was the one making her life difficult. It's not what you think, okay? Great. Because what I think is that you and Mark took a lovely little couple's photo, and instead of putting it in a frame like normal people, you decided to wrap it up like a birthday present and have it delivered in the least suspicious way possible. She glanced at the box, then at me. It's a joke." I stared at her. "A joke?" "Yes," she said quickly, her voice gaining a little too much enthusiasm, like she had just convinced herself it was actually a good answer. "A fool, inside joke at work. We were messing around, someone thought it would be funny to frame it, and Mark was just dropping it off because I forgot it at the office." "You expect me to believe your coworkers are running around printing, framing, and hand-delivering photos of you and Mark for comedy purposes?" Jessica forced a laugh. "I mean, yeah." I tilted my head. "All right. Let's test this theory. Call your office. Right now. Ask them about the hilarious frame photo prank. Let's see if they laugh." She swallowed hard. "Richard, come on. I'm serious. Let's get someone on the phone. Let's have a good laugh together. I'll even put it on speaker so I don't miss the punchline." Jessica's face twitched, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I saw the crack. The moment she realized there was no getting out of this. No fast-talking her way past the fact that she was standing in the driveway with a framed romantic photo of her and another man, delivered with the urgency of a ransom note. "Okay," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Fine. You want the truth." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, finally." She took a deep breath, like she was preparing for a grand confession. "I was helping Mark with something personal, and that required a framed picture of you too? It's complicated. Try me." Jessica hesitated, and then she said the most ridiculous sentence I had heard all year. "Mark is getting a divorce, and I was pretending to be his new girlfriend." I blinked. "What?" Look, I was just helping him out," she rushed on, clearly hoping if she said it fast enough, it would start to sound normal. "His wife is being difficult, and he needed to convince her he's moved on so she'd be more cooperative in the process. The photo was just proof." I let the silence drag out. Just stared at her. "You expect me to believe that this," I gestured to the box, "is some kind of performance piece for Mark's divorce?" Jessica nodded way too fast. "Yes. And that makes total sense to you?" "Yes." I ran a hand down my face. Jessica, come on. She folded her arms. What? You don't believe me? Oh no. I totally believe that the best legal strategy for a divorce is for Mark to go around posing with married women for professionally framed photos. I snorted. I'm sure his lawyer loved that idea. Jessica's lips pressed together. You don't have to be so sarcastic. You don't have to lie so badly. She huffed. It's not a lie. Then great. Let's call Mark's soon-to-be ex-wife and confirm. I'll even break the news gently. Hey, just a heads up. Mark hired my wife as a fake girlfriend for strategic divorce purposes. Don't worry, though. It's totally innocent and definitely not something weird married people do behind their husband's back. Jessica's face turned the color of someone whose bluff just got called. Richard. No. Let's do this. I pulled out my phone. What's her number? She actually took a step back, like I was holding her at gunpoint instead of just asking for a number she obviously didn't have. I don't think that's necessary. Of course not. Because she doesn't exist, does she? Jessica groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose like I was the one making this difficult. You are being so dramatic. I laughed. Actually laughed. I'm being dramatic? You're standing here trying to convince me you took a romantic couple's photo with Mark for business reasons, and I'm the problem. Jessica sighed heavily, shifting tactics. Look, Richard, if you can't trust me, maybe that says more about our relationship than it does about me. I let out a slow, impressed whistle. Oh, that's good. Flip it back on me. Make me the unreasonable one for not blindly accepting a plot twist straight out of a bad soap opera. I shook my head. Jessica, I'd respect this conversation a whole lot more if you just told me the truth instead of feeding me a story that even a middle schooler wouldn't buy. Jessica hesitated, and for a second, I thought she might actually crack. That she might just come clean, say something remotely honest. Instead, she threw her hands up. I can't believe you don't trust me. I rolled my eyes. Jessica, at this point, I don't even trust you to tell me what day of the week it is. She scoffed, grabbing the box. Fine. If you're going to be like this, I'm done talking. Oh no, don't stop now. I was just getting invested in the fake girlfriend legal defense. She turned on her heel and stormed toward the house, leaving me standing there, watching the absolute mess of a situation unfold like a slow-motion car crash. I exhaled. All right. Time to figure out what I was really dealing with. Jessica spent the rest of the evening sulking in the bedroom. I could hear the occasional dramatic sigh from down the hall, which I assumed was her way of reminding me that I was the villain in this situation. The sheer dedication to playing the victim was almost impressive. Almost. Meanwhile, I sat in the living room, staring at the framed photo of my lovely wife and Mark from work. The more I looked at it, the funnier it got. Not in a ha-ha way, but in a wow, she really thought this would fly kind of way. Jessica wasn't even the type to take regular pictures, let alone print them out and frame them. If this was a joke, then I was a national treasure. I needed more. The photo was a solid starting point, but I wasn't about to base my next move on a single piece of stupidity. Jessica's laptop was sitting on the coffee table, closed but not password protected. She had nothing to hide before, at least, nothing she thought she needed to hide. I opened it. Now, I wasn't expecting some grand reveal right away. People who cheat, or at least, people who think they're smart cheaters, aren't going to keep an incriminating folder labeled secret affair on their desktop. But Jessica had a habit of keeping tabs open. So many tabs. It was like she was preparing for an apocalypse where every piece of information needed to be available at a moment's notice. I clicked on the browser. And jackpot. One tab, still open, was an email thread. Not with Mark. No, that would have been too obvious. It was with her friend, Melissa. Jessica, I don't know if I can keep doing this. He's getting suspicious. Today was way too close. Melissa, I told you this would happen. You should have ended things when I said to. Jessica, I know. But Mark is different. It's not just some fling. I actually care about him. I leaned back, letting out a long breath. So there it was. The confirmation. No fake girlfriend legal strategy. No inside joke. Just pure, textbook betrayal wrapped in the world's foolest cover-up attempt. I closed the laptop, sat back, and thought about my next move. I wasn't going to have some dramatic, movie-style meltdown. No screaming, no smashing things, no storming out into the night like some guy in a soap opera. No, I was going to handle this like a reasonable adult. Which meant it was time for revenge. Not the petty kind. Not the slash her tires, throw her clothes out the window kind. That's for amateurs. I wanted something that would stick. Something she wouldn't see coming. Jessica loved control. She liked being the one who dictated how things played out, how people saw her, how every little detail in her life looked polished and perfect from the outside. That was the real weak spot. It wasn't about catching her. It was about exposing her in a way she couldn't recover from. So I started planning. The first step was simple: act normal. The worst thing I could do was let her know I had proof. If she suspected I was onto her, she'd start covering her tracks, making excuses, twisting the narrative. No, I needed her to think she was still winning. The next morning, I greeted her with a casual morning as I poured myself coffee. She hesitated, probably still testing the waters from last night, then relaxed when I didn't immediately start interrogating her again. I waited for her to leave for work before putting my plan into action. Step 1. Tell Melissa to mind her business. I went back to her laptop, opened the email thread, and crafted a reply. Jessica, hey Melissa, you were right. I should have ended it when you told me to. I just feel awful now. Mark's been acting weird, and I think he might be talking to other women. What if I'm just a temporary distraction for him? What if he's playing me too? I don't know what to do. Then I hit send. Why? Because now, Melissa was going to spiral. She was going to panic, start feeding Jessica doubts, and slowly, the cracks in her relationship with Mark would start forming. I didn't even need to do much, just let her own paranoia do the work. Step 2. Make Jessica uncomfortable in her own home. I went into our shared closet and took exactly half of my clothes out. Not in an aggressive way, just enough for her to notice. I left the hangers there, empty like little reminders. Then I did the same in the bathroom. Half of my toiletries? Gone. My toothbrush? Replaced with a brand new, unopened one. Like I was either planning to leave or preparing for something else entirely. Step 3. Mess with Mark. I wasn't going to confront him. No, that would be too simple. I needed him to start feeling the pressure in a way that Jessica wouldn't immediately connect to me. So I made a quick phone call to his office. Hi, this is Richard Thompson, I said, using the fakest professional tone I could manage. I'm calling about Mark. Oh, I'm sorry. Is he in a meeting? The receptionist hesitated. No, he's not in a meeting. Perfect. I actually need to confirm some details before we move forward with his transfer. Transfer? Yes. He was recommended for a position in our out-of-state branch, and I just wanted to verify that he's still interested before we finalize everything. Now, the receptionist was fully thrown off. I wasn't aware of any transfer. Oh, that's odd, I said. He didn't mention it? Silence. Then, I don't think so. Well, I'd hate to waste anyone's time, so maybe you could check with him? Just let him know Richard from HR called about the relocation package details. I could hear the confusion in her voice. Sure. I'll pass along the message. I thanked her and hung up. Now, Mark was going to spend the rest of the day freaking out, wondering why his job thought he was transferring. Maybe he'd even think Jessica was involved. Either way, he was in for a stressful day. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. Step 4. Public embarrassment. Jessica had a small family gathering coming up this weekend. Her parents, a few close friends, nothing big. Normally, I'd avoid these things, but this time? Oh, I was going. And I was bringing gifts. Specifically, a photo album. A lovely, well-organized album containing pictures of Jessica and me, happy moments, anniversary trips, all the highlights. And right in the middle of it, the framed photo of her and Mark. Front and center. I'd let her be the one to explain that little addition. And that was just the beginning. Jessica must have finally picked up on the fact that something was off, because by Friday, she had entered the overcompensation phase. Suddenly, she was a model wife. She cleaned the house, asked me about my day, even went so far as to laugh at one of my jokes, which was suspicious all on its own. So, you're coming to my parents' place tomorrow, right? She asked over dinner, giving me that forced casual tone that meant she was testing me. Wouldn't miss it, I said, popping a chip into my mouth. She hesitated, like she wasn't sure whether to be relieved or more concerned. Good, because I know things have been weird lately, and I don't want us fighting in front of them. Of course, I said, nodding. Wouldn't want that. She relaxed a little. Big mistake. The next day, I walked into her parents' house with my little surprise neatly tucked under my arm. Jessica greeted everyone like she hadn't spent the past few months lying through her teeth, and I played along, smiling, shaking hands, making small talk. Then, right as we were settling into the living room, I pulled out the photo album. Jessica and I have been looking back on old memories lately, I said, flipping through the pages, letting her see exactly where this was going before I landed on the page. The one with the framed picture of her and Mark, nestled right in the middle of our wedding photos. There was a solid 3 seconds of silence before her mother squinted. "Jessica, dear, who's that in the picture with you?" Jessica made a noise somewhere between a cough and a dying engine. "Oh, that's just a friend. From work." It was a dumb joke. Her father leaned forward. "That's Mark, isn't it? The one you mentioned the other day?" "Yes," I said, before she could answer. Jessica's very good at keeping in touch with coworkers. Jessica shot me a look that could have melted steel. The realization had finally hit. She had walked into this. And the best part? She couldn't even make a scene without looking guilty. The car ride home was dead silent. That was when Jessica shifted gears. By Monday morning, I knew I had poked the bear a little too hard. First, my work laptop refused to log in. IT informed me that someone had tried accessing my account from an unusual location, triggering a security lockout. Considering I hadn't done anything of the sort, that meant someone had either guessed or reset my password. Then, my credit card declined at the gas station. I checked my phone. Fraud alert. Jessica wasn't just mad. She was going for the nuclear option. By the time I got home that evening, she was waiting for me, arms crossed, wearing the expression of someone who thought she had just won the final round. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she said the moment I stepped through the door. "I know I am," I said, tossing my keys onto the counter. "Which is why I'm really curious to hear what fool plan you've cooked up this time." Jessica straightened. "I spoke to a lawyer." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Of course you did. I'm filing for divorce," she continued, chin lifted like this was supposed to intimidate me. "And I'm taking the house. And half of everything you own." I whistled. "Wow. You really went for the gold digger starter pack, huh?" She clenched her fists. "You humiliated me in front of my family." "Well, technically, you did that to yourself. I just provided the materials." Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny? You won't be laughing when you're living in a cheap apartment and sending me alimony checks every month." "Oh, Jessica," I sighed dramatically. "You're adorable when you think you have leverage." She faltered, just slightly. "I do have leverage. I have a lawyer. I have evidence." I leaned against the counter. "Oh yeah? What evidence?" Jessica hesitated. There it was. The realization that she was the one with something to lose, not me. "Let me guess," I continued. "You thought about making up some nonsense, but then you remembered that I'm the one who has actual proof. Emails, photos, even that little gift box you got from Mark." I tilted my head. "Did you ever explain that to your parents, by the way? Or did you just hope they'd forget?" Her jaw tightened. "I can still take the house." "You could try," I agreed. "But see, Jessica, you seem to forget that I'm not a fool." She frowned. "I already spoke to a lawyer," I said. "A real one. Not just some dramatic threat to scare you. And here's the fun part, you're the cheater. Which means, in this lovely state we live in, you don't get to just waltz away with half of everything like some victorious reality TV star." Her face paled. "And even if you did somehow make it to court with some ridiculous claim," I added, "all I'd have to do is show the judge those emails between you and Melissa. The ones where you admitted to everything. You really should have deleted those, by the way. I mean, come on. Amateur move." Jessica took a step back, opening and closing her mouth like she wanted to argue but couldn't quite find the words. I pushed off the counter. "But hey, let's say you do want to go the legal route. I'd love to see the look on Mark's face when he gets subpoenaed to testify about your innocent relationship." Jessica's entire body went rigid. I smiled. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Silence stretched between us. She was furious. Not because she had lost, but because she had finally realized she wasn't going to win. "So," I said, stretching my arms. "What now?" Jessica inhaled sharply through her nose, fists clenching and unclenching at her sides. Then, without another word, she turned on her heel and stormed off toward the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I let out a breath and checked my watch. Not bad. But something told me she wasn't quite finished yet. Jessica's next move was predictable. The only thing more fragile than her ego was her ability to accept consequences, so naturally, she wasn't going to take this loss lying down. She had spent years convincing herself she was the smartest person in the room, and now that reality was slapping her in the face, she was bound to try something desperate. I just had to wait. It took exactly 3 days before the next attempt at sabotage arrived in the form of a very dramatic email from her lawyer. "Dear Mr. Thompson, our client, Jessica Thompson, has informed us of an ongoing marital dispute and intends to move forward with a formal divorce filing. We are reaching out to discuss division of assets, including but not limited to the family home, joint savings accounts, and personal property. Please advise on a suitable time for a discussion regarding settlement terms. Regards, Gregory Henshaw, attorney at law. I let out a laugh before forwarding the email to my own lawyer, along with a simple note. Let's have some fun with this. Jessica had chosen the wrong battlefield. If she wanted a messy divorce, I was going to give her a masterpiece. The next morning, she made a show of getting ready, making sure I saw her dressed up in her serious business outfit, the one she always wore when she wanted to pretend she was too important for regular people. I'll be out for most of the day, she said, adjusting her jacket. Meeting with Greg. Tell Greg I said hi, I replied, sipping my coffee, and that I hope he's charging you extra for wasting his time. Her eye twitched, but she forced a smile. You're going to regret underestimating me, Richard. I'd have to start underestimating you first, I said, waving her off as she stormed out the door. She must have expected me to panic, to beg, to crumble at the idea of legal action. What she forgot was that I had been preparing for this since the moment I found that stupid framed photo. By the time she came home, she looked less like a triumphant divorcee and more like someone who had just realized she brought a spoon to a knife fight. You lawyered up, she accused the second she stepped through the door. Of course I did, I said, flipping through a magazine. What? You thought I was just going to hand over my house because you found a guy with a cheap suit and a fancy email signature? Jessica clenched her jaw. You know, Richard, you could just make this easy. Oh, I am making it easy. I already sent your little lawyer all the documentation proving you cheated. The emails, the messages, all of it. I even threw in the picture of you and Mark, just for fun. Should be a real hit in court. She paled. You don't have to be like this. I closed the magazine and looked at her. Jessica, you tried to play the victim. You tried to take everything. And now that it's backfiring, you suddenly want to negotiate. She swallowed. I don't want this to get uglier than it has to be. Oh, now you care about that? I laughed. Jessica, the moment you cheated, the moment you tried to take my house, my money, my everything, you made it ugly. I'm just making sure you don't walk away from it thinking you won. She stood there, staring at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't. Maybe in her mind, I was supposed to be the guy who just rolled over and let her get away with it. Too bad. So, I said, stretching. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept the divorce settlement I already sent to your lawyer. You get nothing. No house. No money. No dramatic courtroom scene where you cry about how unfair this is. Or, you can keep fighting and let me drag this out for months until you realize you never had a chance to begin with. Jessica's hands clenched into fists, but she said nothing. Your choice, I added. But we both know how this ends. She exhaled sharply, then turned and walked away. Not another word. No dramatic farewell. Just silent, seething defeat. 2 weeks later, she signed the papers. I kept the house, kept my savings, and, most importantly, kept my dignity. Jessica, on the other hand, she left with exactly what she brought into this marriage. Nothing. And that, my friends, was the perfect ending. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel